Hey everyone, Happy New Year. I hope everyone had a great night last night, and I hope everyone's year this year is better than last year. So sorry for the headset. For some reason, my mic didn't want to work today, so this is all I had. Today is day one of 365 days of coding. If you don't know what that is, for 2021, I have taken the challenge to do a coding challenge every single day and post the challenge and the solution online. I'm going to make a YouTube video. I'm also going to do blog posts about it every day. So if you want to subscribe and get the challenge in the beginning of the day in your email, I'll put a link in the description down below to sign up for that. I will also put a link to the blog down below so that you can check out those challenges in the morning if you would like. Today's challenge is a popular challenge that you'll see for interviews. It's the Palindrome challenge. We did take it a step further in that we don't accept just a string, we also accept numbers, and we accept sentences. If you don't know what a palindrome is, it's a word, phrase, or sequence that is the same forwards as it is backwards. And if it's in a sentence, we don't care about punctuation, spaces, or capitalization. Usually if you're in an interview, they only ask you to do a basic one-word palindrome, but sometimes they might ask you to do this as well. So I'm going to show you two solutions that I have come up with. They're not the only solution. They're not necessarily the best solution. They're just solutions that I would use, I've seen other people use, and are good solutions. One is definitely more readable. It's the one that I would probably write. That would be the first solution. And then the second solution is definitely a more performance-based solution. It's not as readable, so that's the reason I probably wouldn't use it, but I'll go into that more later. But these are definitely not the only solutions, and please feel free to leave your solution down in the comments down below. I'd love to see them, and I'm sure others would love to learn from you as well. So let's get over to the computer and let's start coding. All right, so now we're back at the computer. Before we start writing code, let's write down in some comments what we're going to need to solve. So we know for sure we need to create a function that accepts something. We don't know if it's a string, but we know that it'll be a string or an int. It won't be an array or an object or anything like that. Then we need to check if it is a string. So actually, check if the passed argument is a string. If it is, we want to make it lowercase so that we don't care about capitalization. So a palindrome doesn't care if something in the beginning of the word or sentence or in the middle has capitalization. We just want to check if the strings are the same. And if we didn't do this, if we had a word like race car that had R as capitalized at the beginning and we didn't set it to lowercase, then we would get that it was not a palindrome, even though it is, because the first letter is capitalized. So if we put everything in lowercase, it's just easier for us to compare them. Then we need to strip out special characters and punctuation. Actually, we need to strip out special characters, punctuation, and spaces because we don't care about any of those according to the definition of a palindrome. Then we're going to need to reverse that string so that we can check it backwards to see if it is the same forwards, and then check it against the passed in string. That will also be lowercase. If it is not a string, then it's a number. So we don't need to worry about lowercase. We don't need to worry about spaces and punctuation because it won't have any. It's a number. But we do need to make it into a string so that we can reverse it and check it against itself. So we're going to make it into a string. make that into an array that we can then reverse and check that against passed in argument that is also a string. And that's it. So I actually missed up here. To reverse this string, it needs to be an array. And then make this back into a string. I'm going to add that down here as well. Now, these 3 lines are all going to be one line, so it's not that big of a deal that you break that out the way that I did, but it might help some people that haven't done it before. So we're just going to make that super clear. So now that we know exactly what we need to do line by line, we're going to start actually writing some code. So first we need to create a function, and we're going to call it isPalindrome, because what it does is check if something's a palindrome. And we know that this is going to accept something. So we don't know if that's going to be a string or a number. Let's just say it's going to be input. Now we need to check if it's a string. So we do Typeof, and then you pass in input, add some spaces so that's easily legible, and do that. If this does not look familiar to you, please take a second. In the description down below, there is a link to an article that goes over what Typeof does. And then we're going to have an else to that, which will be for the numbers. So if this input is a string, we want to take out all of the punctuation and spacing, and we want to make it lowercase for both the original string and the string that we're going to reverse and create. So we're going to reassign input to a string that is lowercase without spaces and without punctuation, so that both the original string and the string that we're going to reverse are already set up. So we're going to make input now the input that was sent in. We're going to do 2 lowercase. And then we're going to strip out all of the punctuation. And this is going to be a regex statement, which I have over here. I will paste it down in the description below. If you don't understand regex, I have also linked below Regex 101 site that is really great for testing, both testing your regex and for learning regex. And then that's going to leave us a string without any punctuation, but this hasn't taken out the spaces. And sometimes, depending on what the punctuation is, it can leave some extra weird spaces. So now we're going to do another regex statement that's going to take out the spaces. And I just noticed I did double quotes instead of single quotes. I personally like single quotes. All of my code linters make me do single quotes, so I'm going to do that. Now let's write out how we're going to reverse this input. So we have our input, and then we're going to do a dot split. And this will make it into an array, and it will split it up by each character. And then we're going to reverse that array. And then we're going to join that array, which will make this back into a string. That's what I was saying before. These 3 lines are kind of all the same. They're all within the same line. It's just a chain, but it might help logically to break that out. And then we're going to check that on the original input. And we already made that lowercase and took everything out, so we don't need to do anything with that string anymore. So we're going to return this, since it will return true or false if they are the same. Now, if it is not a string, we know it's a number. It's actually a little bit easier. So we are going to make the original input into a string. And we are going to do the same thing that we did when reversing it before. So we're going to do input.toString again, and then we're going to split it again and reverse it, and then join it again so that it is a string again. So now we're going to return it. Now this should work. Let's see if it does. True, 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 false, false, true, false, true, false, true. So it worked. This is exactly what we wanted. Problem solved. Now, if you wanted to clean it up a little bit, what you could do, well, I say clean it up. Some people like this. It's a little less code, but sometimes some people can find it hard to read. But what we could do is make this a ternary expression. So we can make this a question mark, take this out, take out this else, and replace it with a colon. We don't need to return anything anymore. And we will need to do this. Oops, sorry. Ternary expressions need to be one-liners. So instead of having this variable where they are staying the same, we will have to put them in each of the inputs that we were going to check. And I believe this should be good. Although, oh, it's because I took out my returns and I did not move them. So now that error should be gone. We're returning this now instead of individually. And let's fix our spacing a little bit. It's a little odd. All right. So if we run this, we should get the same thing. Let's clear that. Sometimes it gets a little hard to read when you're doing that. True, 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 false, false, true, false, true, false, true. All right, looks like we got exactly what we wanted. Now, if we want to take this one step further and actually have a faster solution, I don't like this solution because I find it to be less readable. And to me, readability is really important. The other devs being able to come in and look at your code and understand what it's doing is very important. But if you had a really big palindrome, or if you needed to really care about performance for whatever reason, you could implement it this way and it's substantially faster. And most of my benches, it's between 70 and 90% faster. So we can walk through that really quickly. Now that the code's commented out, let's check the second solution. I don't like the solution as much because it's not as readable. To me, readability is really important, to have another dev be able to come in and read your code and understand what it's doing and be able to edit it as necessary. But this solution is much more performant. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through the characters of the string and check that character with the opposite end of the string's character. So if we're on the first character, we're going to check it with the last character. If we're on the second character, we're going to check it with the second to last character. So again, we need to create a function called isPalindrome that accepts an input. And we are going to, again, check if the input is a string. And if it is, we are going to strip it out. So I'm just going to copy that from what we had before. Take out this return. If it's a string, input is going to be that lowercase string with everything stripped out. All right, now we're going to loop through the string until the middle letter. So while I'm writing this out, if anything doesn't make sense to you, that's any of the built-in functions, I'm going to leave links down in the description below to all of that, all the documentation for those built-in functions so that you can read up on those. And while I'm writing this out, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any of the challenges later in the year, and hit that like button. All right, let's see what this is complaining about. And it just went away. All right, cool. So if the character that we are currently at is equal to the character at the end of the string, then we're gonna, I'm sorry, is not equal to the character at the end of the string, then we're gonna return false. Otherwise, we're gonna continue on the loop. And then if the loop finishes, we're gonna return true. This is because if we checked if they were equal and then returned true, the loop would just end because we're returning something. So we need to check that they're not true and then return false until that middle letter. That way it gets to the loop. If the loop does finish, that means that it was the same, and that means we do have a palindrome. So we return true at the end. So we're gonna run, we're gonna clear first just so we know that we're getting the right ones. And it looks like we did something wrong. Let's see what it was. Oh, it's because I can't spell length. Now let's clear this and try it again. True, true, true. False, false. All right, so it looks like for numbers, we are not getting the right put, and that is because we are not making that into a string. So it doesn't really know what to do with the number. So if it's a type string, we're going to make that into the lowercase. Otherwise, we're just going to make it into a string. We're going to make this into a ternary just so we can keep it all on one line. And let's try this again. Oop. True, false, false, true, false, true, false, true. So there you have it. And again, I don't necessarily think I would use this solution as my solution if I were actually writing this out, but it is a possible solution, and it is much more performant if you have bigger palindromes or if you for some reason really need performance. So I hope you enjoyed this challenge. Please feel free to leave your own solutions down in the description below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the challenges for the rest of the year. Now let's see you at the next one.